There was a press conference Monday at United Nations headquarters in New York, which featured the two top officials of the International Court of Justice. The subject matter covered included the various legal claims in two conflict zones, Ukraine and Palestine. This was the president of the ICJ, Judge Joan E. Donahue, responding to a question from a Ukraine-based reporter.
My name is Volodymyr Ichenko. I'm a Ukrainian journalist from a national news agency of Ukraine, Ukrinform. I've got a couple of questions. You mentioned several cases that you are considering. Can you give us any details about the Ukraine against Russia case, please?
Yes, I can. And of course, you'll appreciate that when we talk about our cases, we can describe them in a way that conforms with what's been known publicly. There are two cases pending before the court that were brought by Ukraine against the Russian Federation. In the first of those cases, which was filed well before the operation that the Russian Federation calls a special military operation, in that case, Ukraine is alleging that Russia is violating its obligations under a convention on the financing of terrorism, and the allegations relate to events in eastern Ukraine, starting in 2014. And in the second piece of that same case, Ukraine is alleging that the Russian Federation is violating its obligations under a convention that's called the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racism. And in that convention, race is defined to include ethnicity. So persons of Ukrainian ethnicity or Crimean Tatar ethnicity would be considered to be a race under that convention. And the allegation there is that the Russian Federation is violating its obligations in the treatment of those people. We are not asked by Ukraine to pass judgment on the legality of the way that the Russian Federation acquired control of Ukraine, of Crimea in 2014. We're looking at its conduct there. And this is a common challenge for us in our work, because sometimes states consent to the court's jurisdiction to interpret and apply particular treaties. And when they do that, our jurisdiction is limited to the scope of that treaty. And so in the case I just mentioned, Ukraine has identified two treaties to which Ukraine and the Russian Federation are parties, and they've alleged violations of those two treaties. But we don't have scope in that case to look at other issues such as the legality of the way that Crimea was incorporated into the Russian Federation or the use of force. Now, the second case that we have is pending before us, and it was brought by Ukraine a few days after the operation in February 2022 started. And in that case, Ukraine is invoking as the basis of jurisdiction the Genocide Convention. And Ukraine is arguing that Russia falsely accused Ukraine of committing genocide and then used that false accusation as a predicate for its operation. Right now, what we are doing in that case is we are considering the objections of the Russian Federation to our jurisdiction. So in the first case that I mentioned, we are being asked to decide whether there are violations. We've had a hearing and it's under deliberation in the court. In the second case that was brought right after the operation in February of 2022, the question for us now is whether the court has jurisdiction to continue to go forward, because the Russian Federation has opposed, has argued that we don't have jurisdiction. So that's an overview.
Another question, a little bit different. What is your attitude to the idea of establishing an international tribunal to bring Russia to justice for the crime of aggression?
It's not something that I would express a view on as the president of the court, and I wouldn't expect the court to express a view on it either. I mean, we follow events. We're aware of all kinds of initiatives out there, including that one, but it's not something it would be appropriate for me to express a view on.
And the third question.
Last. Yeah.
Sorry. it is known that Russia didn't sign the UN Charter. Perhaps that's why it violates so much. After the disappearance of the USSR, there was no decision of the General Assembly of the Security Council on the continuity of the Soviet Union in the form of Russia in the UN structures. How do you personally assess the legitimacy of Russia's membership in the UN Security Council and the UN in general?
My essential response to that is to be skeptical of your appreciation of the factual situation, because it's my understanding that when the Soviet Union dissolved into a series of states, there were a series of events that gave rise to the recognition of those various successor states, including Russia. So I don't have anything more to say about it than that.
Also at that press conference, Judge Donahue responded to a question about the situation between Israel and Palestine.
Thank you so much for this briefing. Efrem Kosaifi from Arab News. I have a question on the advisory opinion on the Israeli occupation. Any details you could give us would be very much appreciated on where we're at right now with the process. I know last time we heard there were 58 countries, if I'm not mistaken, who presented their comments, or I don't know how you call it, opinions on the. Are there more countries? Is the door still open? Where are we at in the case? I'm hearing the Palestinians are a little bit impatient also to hear the opinion you're going to render. That's my first question.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. And so first of all, in terms of the timing, the request was filed, was presented to us in January of 2023. And it was adopted here, but for some reason there was a delay. It was adopted here on the 30th of December. And the question from the General Assembly comes to us after it's been presented by the General Assembly. And it's a complicated and quite detailed set of questions. It's not just one question. The court set a deadline that we set trying to balance the desire on the part of the proponents to move quickly on the one hand against the importance to allow time for member states to prepare meaningful submissions and for the court to benefit from well-prepared submissions. And that's what led us to set 25 July as the deadline for this first round. So the first round is behind us. That's what the registrar was referring to when he said that we had received, I think it's 57, that's including the observer state of Palestine and the, so we have member states, the observer state of Palestine, and 3, if I recall, international organizations. Then the next thing that will happen is that on the 25th of October, so this week, all of those that submitted those initial statements have an opportunity to submit another round of written statements in which they're supposed to react to those others. So they have them. They can look at them and they can support another one or disagree. And so that's a lot of paper, as you can see. And then the court plans to hold its hearings in that case in February of 2024. So then after that, and in fact, that we've just put out a press release today with the deadline, with the dates. So see, I do have something to tell you that's timely. So the hearing will open on Monday, 19 February 2024. And we set that date in particular because as you may know, there are elections for the International Court of Justice to be held in a week or two. And the composition of the court will change in early February. And so this is about the earliest possible in the next composition of the court that we can hold a hearing, because I'll step down as president on, I think, the 5th or so of February. New judges will join the court the next day. The court will elect a new president and vice president. They'll have to get themselves settled, and so that they have made this advisory opinion their first order of business, if you will, in the next triennium. That's what we call it. Then the question, well, when will there be an an opinion, the court doesn't announce the dates on which it plans to issue opinions until all the work is done, until essentially the final proofreading, because we never want to set expectations that we can't meet. So I can't give you a specific date. I can say that it will be a period of several months at least before, based on our practice and given the volume of the record that I mentioned and the complexity of the questions, this is not something that will be swiftly disposed of. I won't be part of it, but I can say with confidence that it will be looked at carefully and thoroughly by all the judges on the court.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.